guys, so I'm going to show you how to make that colorful cactus that I posted yesterday. What you're going to need is 3 brushes. You don't necessarily need the big brush, but I use it for the background because it goes a lot faster with it. So it's basically about a 1-inch flat brush. We have the medium flat brush, and then we have a round pointed brush. Okay, we have 4 colors which we're going to use. We have blue, yellow, red, and white. We have a container of water, and I'm using a little canvas board here. You can go as big as you like. You can use a regular canvas. You can use cardboard if you don't have a canvas, whatever you have lying around. So I'm gonna get started with the background. I'm gonna rinse out the brush a little bit, dab it dry. Now we're gonna work the background pretty fast, and we're gonna keep it pretty pale. So I'm just layering, just making some vertical strokes with some blue paint, very randomly. I'm keeping it really, really light, okay? I'm not adding too much. Now I'm just gonna dip my brush in white paint and work with the white. So I'm just creating these vertical lines. Try not to add too much. I mean, you could really like go as dark as you want or as light as you want. I want to keep the base light for my own painting, so I'm not gonna add too much blue. Blue's pretty overpowering, so I'm gonna keep it light. So I'm just layering on that paint, not making the coat too thick, keeping it pretty thin because I want it to dry quickly. And the advantage to using acrylic paints is that it does dry really, really fast, which is great. But you gotta kind of work a little bit fast so you can actually blend all the colors. That's the tricky part, but you'll get used to it once you continue painting. So just these vertical strokes, getting full coverage. Now you can do the background in any color you want. I chose blue because I felt like doing a blue background, but if you want to go pink, if you want to leave it white or do like a gray ground, whatever you guys want to do. So once I'm putting the color down, you're gonna start seeing all these different tones. I don't have one flat color because I just put the paint down in different positions, and I'm not in different areas, and I'm not blending it too much. I still want to see all these different tones of blue. I want some lighter areas, I want some darker areas, so I'm not going to blend it too much. The more you blend, the flatter your color is going to look. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. What I want to do also, just for my own painting, is just add a tiny bit of yellow. So I'm really just dipping the corner of the brush into it, just to add a couple of areas that are a little warmer. And if it's too yellow, just go back with some white. Go over it, just to give it a different tone in a couple of different areas. Okay. So that's about it. I'm gonna stop here for my background. Once you're done with the background, you could just forget about the big brush, rinse it out, and we're gonna get working with the medium brush now. So for the cactuses, we're gonna take a little bit of white paint, and you could start pretty much drawing out the shape. So the cactus shape is like an oval shape, okay? So we're gonna go around. Wherever you want to add one. If you're not comfortable with the medium brush, you can always use the little brush to get your shapes out. So don't worry about it too much. It's just to map out where your cactus is going to be. See? So you can make it anywhere, any size you want. You want some big areas. This is really faint. It's very subtle. It's just so I have an idea of where to place my cactuses. So I'm just drawing the base here. Make some shapes wherever you want. Smaller ones, bigger ones. Keep it really random, okay? So that'll be it. So we're gonna start. Now, keep in mind, this is a colorful cactus. It's not realistic. It's pretty abstract, so you can play with any color you want, okay? So I'm gonna be working with some blue tones, some purple tones, some green tones. If you wanna go pink or red or more warm, go for it. There's like no right or wrong to this, okay? So I'm gonna start with a base coat. I'm gonna start with the little one here and work with the blue tones. So I'm gonna go with a medium blue. So I'm mixing a little bit of blue and a little bit of white to get a medium blue. We always wanna start with a darker base, okay? And always keep in mind that for this painting, you're gonna have one area, one side of it that's darker and another side of it, the other side is gonna be lighter. So that'll be the light source. Again, if you wanna switch to using the small brush for certain areas, if you're not comfortable with the medium, go for it, whatever works for you. So right now I'm just doing this base coat here. Maybe I'll do a bit of blue here. Always keeping it on the right side because this is what I want, the darker side to be the right side. The left side's gonna be the lighter side. So let's go here with some blue, just plain blue. So have fun with the colors. You don't have to like mix them perfectly. If you wanna add any other color to it, you can. I'll show you as we go along what I'm gonna do, but I'm just basically retracing one side of it. Okay, and it goes pretty quick. So we're gonna have this side here, and maybe this cactus too. I'm gonna do a blue coat here, and it'll turn to green on the other side. So let's keep one side blue. And this one I'll just do a little bit. All right, so it's pretty messy, okay? This is fine. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm gonna rinse out my brush and I'm gonna start working darker, lighter. You could switch going back and forth, okay? You can use your medium brush for certain parts. You could use your small brush, whatever you wanna play with, whatever you feel comfortable with. If I wanna create a darker side now, just to give more of a shadow, I'm gonna mix a little bit of blue and red together to get a deeper blue. If I wanna make it more purple, I'm gonna add more red, okay? So the more red you add, the more purple it's gonna look. So for the little areas, just gonna give a little bit of a shadow here. Okay, and right down here as well. Here, I'm gonna switch back to the medium brush. So, taking a little more red, want to start getting into those purple tones though. Okay, so the more I cake it on, the more dimension I'll start getting. Now, if at any point you feel like, oh my God, it's too purple or it's too whatever color that you weren't hoping for, just let it dry a little bit and you can always go over it, okay? So no stress. Okay, so here we go. A little bit here. All right, so for this cactus, because it's more of a purple tone, the left-hand side, I'm gonna go with a lighter purple. So I'm just adding a little bit of white to my brush. It's just making everything a little bit lighter. Maybe go for like more of a warmer purple and start doing the opposite side to it. Now, like I said, this is just the base coat. We're gonna be adding more color to it, more layers. And because the paint is still wet now, it's easy to kind of blend in, okay? So it's almost like working with makeup. So here I'm just gonna go a little bit lighter. Again, it is messy. Don't worry about too much of that. Right now, we just wanna get the colors down. And then we'll start giving it a little more detail, a little more definition. So don't be afraid if it's not perfect at the beginning. It's okay. That's the fun part about painting, and you can honestly fix everything. People get so stressed when they think they messed up, and it's like, no worries, man. Just let it dry and go over. You can always correct anything you do. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna do a lighter side here. I'm keeping it pretty blotchy. I'm kind of just dabbing where I want to blend the colors because I want to still have all this texture, okay? I don't want it to be too perfect because that's the style I'm going for. All right, so already just by looking at it, you're starting to get a more rounded effect. And that's what we're looking for, to give it just a little dimension. So we're still gonna keep playing with this, and then once we start adding finer details, it'll really come together. All right, so that'll be the purple one. I'm gonna go darker on the dark side as well, so on the shadow side. Just give it a little drying break for now. I'm gonna work on this one and just make it a little bit of a paler blue. So I'm just mixing a tiny bit of blue, more white, to get that nice light blue color. And this will be this cactus right here. Again, because the colors are still wet, it's so easy to work with. Like once they dry, it'll be a little bit more difficult to work with, to blend. But acrylic paint is so forgiving. You can always adjust things, and it is easier to work with than oils. Oils take a really long time to dry, so you need a lot of patience. I like oils. It's not my favorite to work with because I really like working fast. Okay, so that'll be the little cactus. We'll get back to that later. We're gonna start working on the other one here, which is gonna be more of a blue-green, and maybe on this side, I'll just make it more of a green tone. So let's go with some green. We did some blue base. Now we're gonna go with like a blue-green tone. So I'm taking a little bit of blue, mixing it with some white. With some yellow, sorry. Adding a little bit of white to that too. Okay, so I think I'm gonna play with this color for a bit. And again, because it's still wet, it'll blend nicely. Retrace that side. Once that's dry, you can give it a nice light yellow highlight. All right, let's go down here and fill in this shape too. I'm gonna go darker for the other side because I don't feel like there's enough contrast, but for now, let's just work with this. Okay. So I'm not gonna go all the way here because I'm gonna make this a very limey, almost yellow tone. I'll stop here for now. Let's go back to the dark side. Let's make it a lot darker. So I'm gonna put a bit of that blue color. Anytime you want to darken blue, you can always mix it with a little bit of red, okay? Now in between all this, I haven't even been rinsing my brush because even like those slight green tones in there, it'll make it match a little bit better. It'll make it kind of be in the same family as the green tones. So just adding a little bit of a darker tone here. Again, I'm always kind of dabbing it almost very slightly. Go up here. All right, and base 2. So now we're creating more of a shadow on the opposite side. All right, and this side too. And finally, the top part here. All right. Okay, so let's start adding some of the lighter tones too. Okay. And for the last little bits of cactus, I'm gonna make it more of a greenish yellow tone. So I'm gonna add a little more yellow to the green that I just created, a little more white, really lighten it, and start working on this side. Okay, down here, let's go with some darker areas. Again, like I said, I'm so used to using the medium brush. I love working with it, but like I said, if you're a beginner and you want to go back and forth using the smaller brush to get in all those little crevices or corners, go for it. Go back and forth. Do whatever works for you. You're gonna get used to painting and working with the paint, different consistency, and once you're comfortable with it, you can do whatever works best for you. So I'm gonna rinse out my brush once more. Go with a little bit of white, a little bit of yellow, and hit that left side of it with a bit of a highlight. All right, so I'm gonna keep that like that. I'm just blending the color a little bit. I'm gonna do the same up here because it's not blended too well. Go back with the dark. If you feel like your color's already dry and it's not blending well, just go back with the darker tone, a little bit of the darker tone, and go over that area and you'll see that the color will blend together. So if I go back to the darker tone, I'm wetting the darker paint, and then I can mix it with the lighter paint that's already wet, okay? I'll do another tutorial on how to blend colors. All right, so for now, let's go a bit darker here. So wherever you wanna adjust, or if you wanna darken an area a little bit more, go for it. Now's the time. All right, so I think I'm happy with that for now. So let's switch to the small brush now. I'm gonna start adding some details. Now's the fun part, okay? So whatever section you're working on, you can add whatever other colors for more details, more highlights. So I'm gonna rinse out my small round flat brush and I'm gonna go dark first. I'm gonna go create some dark lines, some dark tones. So I'm getting a little bit of that blue and red, mix it together. I'm gonna start on this side. So I'm gonna create more of a shadow here and I'm gonna start putting in a few little lines, okay? Just to give it a little more detail. Wherever you want, if you want to add like little blotches of paint, go for it. I want this to be like a pretty abstract cactus. It doesn't have to be super perfect and realistic. That's not the look I'm going for. So have fun with it. The more lines you have, the more colors, the more tones, the nicer it'll look. Also, I'm not using a lot of paint. I never ever do. If you're a beginner, it's easier to work with very thin layers of paint till you get used to how to work with it and the consistency, the pressure of your brush. It always helps to put thin layers of paint, okay? It'll be easier to work with. If you cake it on, it's gonna take a long time to dry, and if you see like you're gonna apply more color over that, and it'll just blend in and it's just not gonna work. So if you wanna create highlights on top of a wet base, it's not gonna work. If you wanna create highlights on a dry base, it'll work because your color will stand out. If the base is wet, it'll just blend in, okay? So I'm adding a little bit of white here. Actually, I put a little too much paint. So I'm gonna add a little bit of white just to create a little more of a highlight. And I might go add a little bit of pink just to give it a little bit of color. So I'm gonna take a little bit of red, a little bit of white, mix that together. Get a nice light pink. And I'm just gonna add just a couple of like little pink tones here. Can even go add like a bit of a magenta tone, which I think I'm gonna do as well. Okay. So let's go a little bit darker. I'm gonna take a little more red, just a tiny bit of white. And like I said, anytime you feel like you put something down that you don't love, you want to go over something, you can. You could just correct it. Don't worry about that. I'm going to take a little more of that light blue. Okay, and just create some more lines here. So the more layers of color you'll have, like I said before, the nicer it'll look. I'll create some white little lines here. Okay, so I'll leave that one as is for now. We're gonna work on the other ones. Let's go to the purple one. So the purple one, we could add some dark tones of blue and mix it with just a tiny bit of red. And go back to this side. Let's go really dark here. And we could start adding some little lines, some little blotches, whatever little details you want. Might go a little more red in that. So let's do the same thing up here. I'm creating all these broken lines. There's barely any pressure on my brush. I don't want to apply too much pressure. The more pressure you apply, the thicker your line is going to be. Less pressure you apply, the thinner your line is going to be. Okay, so let's go with just a little bit of blue. You can retrace your shape, clean off the lines here. If you feel like your line's a little bit crooked. All right. So, just cleaning up the line around. So even if some of the lines are a little thick right now, I could just go over them. All right, so this one's a little more purple. And finally the sky. Let's add more red in there, a little bit of white. Now experiment with your colors. We're using the same 3 colors for this cactus. So we have red, blue, and a little bit of white. You can make different tones of purple, different tones of blue with that. If you want to add highlights in pink, go for it. We're going to do that in a bit. Okay, so I went pretty dark. Just going to go back with some highlights now. All right, so I'm going to rinse out my brush. And let's go add some, we could do some lighter pink highlights and lighter blue highlights. So let's start with a light blue. And start working our way here. Again, very gently, not a lot of pressure. Okay. So I'm just going lighter, keeping it mostly on the left-hand side because that's where the light source is coming from. And right at the top here. Okay. Rinse out my brush. I'm gonna add a bit of pink. Okay, might go here as well. When I'm making my lens on the cactus, I'm kind of curving them slightly because you want to create that rounded shape. So when I'm drawing the lines, I'm not making them completely vertical. They do have a slight curve to them. Okay, always follow the shape of the round, the oval that we initially created. Okay, so here we go. And just adding a few highlights really starts to make it pop. Right up here. Again, like I keep repeating, if you went too crazy with the highlights, if you want to go back and add some dark bits, you can. You can always go back and forth. It's a little harsh, so I'm going to soften it up a little bit. All right. A little more white. So at the end, we'll really add some white dots and a couple of really light highlights to really make it stand out. Really create that contrast. Okay, let's move on to the last one. We're gonna create some highlights. This one I might do a little bit of a light blue and a light yellow. So let's go with the light blue first. Just a bit of blue and white. And we'll start adding some of these curved lines here and there. I feel like maybe at the bottom I'll go a little bit darker. So let's start with this light blue. See how that goes. Again, always curve these lines. All right, how about here? And a little more here. You know what also always helps for me? When you're creating thin lines, use a little bit of water in your paint so it'll become a little bit more liquid and you'll be able to create thin lines easily. So take advantage of the water that's there. There's also different mediums you can use to kind of create a more liquid consistency for your paint. There's like matte mediums, and so I'm just going in with like a lighter green, which is yellow, blue, and a little more white. All right, so now we're getting more of these warm tones. I'm gonna add more yellow, more white. So now I'm gonna work with this light yellow, which I'm gonna use for this side, which is more of a green tone. Maybe a little bit here and up here. Clean up the line a little bit. Okay. So this one's definitely more of a green tone. When you start adding these layers on top with the yellows, and it'll make the overall appearance of it more green. Okay, so I might just blend this a little bit. Let's go dark. Add a bit more of the dark areas. So I'm gonna take a bit of blue and yellow, make a dark green, and just hit up some sections here on the opposite side. Water. Maybe here, just a little bit to create a bit of a shadow on that one. And down here. I'm gonna go a bit lighter. And just some blue here. Okay, so you could start creating all these little delicate lines wherever you want on your cactus. Okay, I'm gonna go a bit lighter again. Just keep at it till you're satisfied with the outcome. Also, what helps if you're working on something for a long period of time is just take a break, take a breather, step away from the canvas. I do that a lot when I'm working big, because when you're staring at something for so long, you can't really tell anymore if it's like almost finished or not. The hardest part is to know when it's done. So sometimes it's best just to take a break, go back at it afterwards, have a look, and then you'll say like, oh, okay, pretty happy with it at this point, or if you want to add or whatever you want to do, but you gotta know when to stop too. Okay, so I feel like pretty good with that. So we're gonna add a little bit of white now, and then we'll add the flowers. So I'm gonna start adding these little white dots to it. I'm gonna take a little bit of white paint on my small brush, just twist it on your plate so you get that nice fine point. And I'm gonna start dotting my cactus in little rows. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. What I can also do when I'm teaching my classes actually is I tell them you could dip the back side of your brush in the paint. If you want to create a perfect little dot, the back side works perfectly. You get like a perfect circle every single time. So you just have to apply a little bit of pressure and you could get these little dots. Okay, it's a little trick that I use sometimes. Even your dots, when you're adding them, again, always keep the lines slightly curved. So I'm adding these little rows, but I'm kind of following the shape of the cactus at all times, because you want to kind of give it that rounded look. So if you mess up on the dots, or if you're like, oh my God, I put too much paint, just go back with whatever color, let's say the dark blue or the lighter yellow, whatever color's below it, and you can just add like a couple of streaks over it to cover it, and you can start over. All right, so what I'm gonna do next is just in some areas, I'm gonna create these very, very thin lines. Okay, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I feel like it just creates a little more dimension. Very gently, I'm like barely touching the canvas. That one's a little too much, so I might go over and cover that. Take a little more white paint. Okay. It's so subtle, like you barely see it. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. Maybe I'm gonna cover that one that's a little too intense. Let's go back with some of this purple color and let's kind of tone that one down a little bit. So like I said, anytime you feel like you messed up or you're not too happy with something, you can always cover it. Okay, there you go. So let's create some flowers now. For the flowers, I'm basically using some white paint, little brush. So I'm taking a little bit of white paint. Here I'm adding a tiny bit more paint on my brush, okay? Not too much, but, and what I do is I just basically create this like, just these little lines here and there. I'm gonna do one here, wherever you wanna add a flower, like anywhere on your tips of the cactus. Maybe I'll put one up here. And up here. do one here. So I'm just creating these lines, almost like a half circular shape. It's gonna be rounded at the top here. Okay, so it's just these little lines, and I'm gonna give it a little bit of a shadow afterwards. Okay, and maybe here a little more. All right, so for the shadow part, I'm just gonna take a tiny bit of blue paint, not too much, because I just want to give it a tiny bit of contrast, not too much. Just go at the bottom here for these ones. Okay, and maybe a bit here. Again, you can use like any color if you want to do the shadow in like a greenish tone or a purplish tone down there. Maybe I might add some red just to give it a little more. Okay. And if it's too intense, go back with some white. So I'm going to take a bit of that green, just adding a bit of that darker green, blue green. Okay, and I'm gonna go back with just a little bit of white. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it. If you want to keep working on it, go for it. This was just a quick little fun cactus for beginner level painting. If you try it, post it. I'd love to see your results. And like I said, have fun with it. You can do any color you want. You can work with warmer tones, anything you like. So have a great day. Thanks for watching and hope you enjoyed.